The burning that went on was being done by Saddam's people. They were people, a lot of reports about buses coming from Tikrit, where Saddam had one of the major areas for Saddam in the first days. Guys, 30 or 40 guys would rush out, go into a state building, burn it down. Because once you have a society in which all marriage records are gone, all land records, all lease records, all records of real estate transactions, that's what's missing in that society. You've really undercut the thing that make a civil society work. All the records were destroyed. And the looting was on one level. There was a systematic destruction that is now pretty much conceded to be part of a plan that we didn't see. So Rumsfeld's talking about the looting is looting, it's a fact of life, people are free. Meanwhile, there's something as much more systematic was going. What I'm telling you now is some of the assessments that have been made. They don't want to share with us, I don't blame them. You don't want to be shared. You don't want to know how dumb we were in those days and how wrong-headed we were about what we were doing from and what they were doing from the very beginning. Okay, so you got a problem, late August. So they bring in a guy named Blackwell. Blackwell was the ambassador to India. Nasty piece of work, but very bright, very tough. Blackwell's basic plan was basically the plan that's being articulated now. We're going to take it down. Take down the Sunni world. We're just going to go get them. We're going to find them. We're going to make the trouble we have. It took him months to come up with this theory. He was a special advisor on Iraq to Condoleezza Rice, the national security advisor. And with more important, really sort of the big brief for about 6 months inside the government in 2003, 2004. The issue was that there were, clearly the people knew when terrorists were getting together and insurgents were getting together and planning a bomb, and they weren't telling us because they were afraid of the insurgency. If they ratted out the operation, they would get hurt. The theory was we have to make the Sunnis, the Sunni population, more afraid of us than of the insurgents. That's one of the underlying theories of some of the increased violence and the more bombing and, you know, what happened. I can tell you that bombing has gone up exponentially in Iraq. There's no Iraqi air defense. It's just what they call a pigeon shoot, or whatever the cliche. What is the cliche? A turkey shoot. There's no, our planes go in and they bomb at will. And do we ever get a statistical account of the bombings? Have you ever seen how many raids took place this month? How much tonnage was dropped in any particular month? I will guarantee you, last year before Fallujah, from the early summer until November, the attack on Fallujah last year, it went up exponentially. I can't tell you it stayed at that level. I don't know. We fly out of an air base in the Gulf and the aircraft carrier there. Truman was out there flying around the clock. And so we don't even know about the bombing. You don't even hear anecdotally a bomb, they drop bombs here and there, but there's no systematic understanding of how much bombing we do. And we don't know. We have some guesses. They'll give us some numbers. I don't know if they're accurate numbers. A lot of bombs are being dropped by us every day. And it's just another calling card we have. There's no reason to worry about being shot down. No planes get shot down. There's no air defenses. And it isn't a way to win the hearts and minds of people. And it isn't even communicated to us. We don't even know about it. It's not on our table for us. And the point I'm making, the extent of the daily violence, it's not only insurgent violence, which is, of course, we find abhorrent, but if you're an Iraqi, whether you're bombed, killed inadvertently by an insurgent or by an American bomb inadvertently, doesn't make much difference. There's also violence on both ends. And one never should think the ends justify the means. Anyway, so late August, Blackwell's there. He wants to get tough. One of the problems you have, what else is it? By September, October of 2003, it's a year before the election. Rove gets brought in because the president's got an election another year, and Iraq seems to be going off track. The president has landed on the plane in his jump chute, and it's not going well. And the insurgency is on. We can hear them. We can hear the diddy boppers. We can hear them talking. They're little groups. They chatter to each other. They have communication means. They have the internet. They have other ways of communicating. They actually use electronic devices. We can hear it. We can't break the codes. We don't even know what the codes are like. We know they're talking. We know there's an operation out there. We think the Iranians are doing a lot to help them, which they probably were, but we're not even sure of that. So let's increase the pressure and get more intelligence on the insurgency from the prison population. By this time, we'd got 20,000 people in prison. What we were doing is we were doing blockades. A bomb would go off somewhere, and we'd run every male we could find in the area, we'd grab and put in jail. And as you may or may not know, by this time, you wouldn't know this, but one of the things we knew already, the White House knew already, is when the war in Afghan began, if you remember, 9/11 was the bombing of the World Trade Centers, et cetera, the four attacks here. And by the way, I'm sure, again, let me just restate, it's been 4 years plus, and by 3 years and 8 months after Pearl Harbor, we managed to defeat the Nazis and the Japanese, the Germans and the Japanese. We have not come close to accomplish any objectives here. By any standard, this president should be ridiculed as a failed war leader. But of course, that's not a measure, that's not a standard we use. I don't know why. I don't know why. It seems to me, he set up certain goals, get Osama bin Laden, and he hasn't delivered. Anyway, this hasn't stopped terrorism. This is all obvious stuff. So anyway, to go back to the history, we grabbed people. We had a large prison population. We didn't know who the insurgency was. We didn't know when they would attack. If they hit the Jordanian embassy, we knew about it later. We just didn't know. We wanted to know. So we began to put the screws on the prison population. That was the reasoning. And one of the reasons you see the pictures, you remember the pictures of the naked guys and the girls with their thumbs up, the kids in the night shift at Abu Ghraib prison, which was one of the more infamous prisons always. One of the reasons they did it, so I was trying with my friends to figure out, I know people in the special forces who were a lot of them very disgusted, as I say. Most America, you'd be amazed. One could be critical, but there's an enormous amount of integrity in our system. Most people want to do their job right, whether they're in the CIA, the FBI, overseas, they want to do the job right, and they don't like what's going on. And there were people who very early understood that there were serious abuses going on, and in Afghanistan, the war began in Afghanistan in late October. By early December, we had scads of prisoners, hundreds and hundreds of suspected Al-Qaeda. We set up the prison in Guantanamo, began shipping people there by the end of the year. By early in 2002, long before the war in Iraq, we had 600 people there, and there were problems in the prison. And in the summer, there was a lot of reports of abuses, et cetera, excessive violence. No intelligence was coming out of it, despite what they say. Nothing useful was coming out of these interrogations that were going on. There's a very competent guy in the Central Intelligence Agency who was born in that part of the world, was sent there, spent some time in the summer, came back and wrote a scathing report. I begin this book with this story. Wrote a scathing report. And there was a wonderful Air Force general named John Gordon, 4-star general, he was a physicist, and he ran the aerospace programs, but later in his career he worked as a special assistant for the CIA, and he was brought into the White House, I think at the end of the Clinton administration, as an intelligence advisor, an advisor to the National Security Council, was stayed on through the first couple of years of the Bush administration. And John Gordon got a hold of this report, which was being passed around quietly. And here's what the report basically said. The Pentagon always was very angry at me for talking about this. The CIA was, and I just said, put it out. If I'm misrepresenting it, putting out. The basic report was that this man was shocked by what he saw. He saw 80-year-old people. He thought they were 80. They could have been in the 70s. Very old people living in their own excrement in cells. He saw abuse. He saw violence. And more significantly, more than half the people he interviewed at length, because his Arabic was idiomatic, fluent, had nothing to do with violence. But he said, here's the problem. Things in that prison are so bad, and it's so hopeless, that if they weren't Al-Qaeda when we captured them, boy, they are now. So what do we do? And so this was because of guys like John Gordon in the White House, and others. And there were others who stayed in the system he retired, so it's okay for me to mention his name. There were guys like that. They brought it to Condoleezza Rice's attention. She called in Rumsfeld. She's in the cast of characters. It's Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld, and then everybody else is at a different level. She's not there. Those three are the guys. They do it. They run the vulgar, unbelievable stuff that's going on around the world today off the books. There's stuff going on that they don't tell Congress about. These guys do whatever they want. They are totally out of control. But that's another story. That's what I'm trying to do right now, out of control. These guys can do what they want. They have control of the military. They have control of the system. They have the Congress cowed, and they have all the money they want from Iraq. They have the Iraqi oil money, and we also discovered since the war ended $3.5 billion that Saddam had stashed, that they use as a kitty. If you remember Iran-Contra, that scandal was necessitated because you needed to generate money to free the prisoners. So you had to do an arms trade, you had to get involved. You needed money. And you didn't want to go to Congress because you didn't want Congress to know you didn't trust it in the Reagan administration in Central America, Bill Casey and all that. So now you have all the money you want.